Yeah, this is a perfect morning.
Meanwhile, when we finish, I got to take two Tylers to daycare and then go to workouts.
I just was playing because I love the game. Like, and it's scary to me.
It's really easy for the game to become a job.
Glow sticks in his hands, whistle in his mouth.
Man, kids out there playing the game, staying out of trouble, competing. I love it.
Coach, everybody's son's Peyton Manning. You should know that.
I told him the first day, I was like, guys, you want to know a secret? Coaches absolutely have favorites. And you want to know who their favorites are? The kids that show up on time, work really hard, don't get in trouble, and answer with yes or no, sir. You mix all that together, throw in a little bit of production, man, top of the list.
I agree. It's football is a game where everybody is treated fairly, not equally.
Oh my gosh, Wade Phillips. Well, I think we talked about this a couple years ago. I read this spring. I read Jimmy Johnson's his book Swagger, which, by the way, if you haven't read it and you're a coach, boy, there's some absolute gems in there. But he talks about when they cut like a reserve linebacker when he was in Dallas because he kept sleeping in meetings, and somebody asked him, Coach, what would you have done if that was Troy Aikman falling asleep in meetings? He goes, I'd have quietly gone over and woke him up and asked what we could do to keep this from happening. We're not going to sit here and pretend like all players are the same.
Yep, they're not.
And obviously that's an extreme example. But I would never take it and copy and paste, apply it to the high school ranks. But guys have to understand, coaches have to understand that you can't coach them the same. You can't across the board. You can't blanket coach them the same. You can't you got to have different leashes and different levels of grace for guys because of either what they've done or what they can handle, mentally, emotionally.
Right.
I'd say the one that's probably the most consistent application is the quarterback position, though. Like, that guy's always getting treated pretty much the same as the last quarterback I coached and the one 5 years ago and the one 10 years ago. Because I think there's a certain mold that fits, and it's pretty rare that you get a guy that comes in that you have to try and figure out the best way to coach him. As compared to just being like, no, you're the guy, and this is the expectation. Be the guy.
Yeah, I agree because I feel like, we always talk about, especially at Vanderbilt, like a horizontal totem pole across the board. Even though everybody knows like there is some verticality within that totem pole, but like I tell my quarterbacks all the time, like the way it should be is obviously head coach, coaches, quarterback, rest of the team. Not in like regards of like we're better than everybody else, but just in regards of like you should basically be another coach. And so like a quarterback and somebody that just, happens to take a snap under center is totally different. And so I tell them all the time, like you have to understand that you are different than your peers, not in a nose up kind of way, but like if you're a quarterback, you are different than everybody else here, and you have to act that way. And you know, if they're not in that mold, then they're probably not your quarterback. They're probably a receiver or something like that. But I think that's why, to your point, that like they're treated all the same for the most part because they fit into that kind of section of just different. They have the X factor, whatever it may be. But yeah, that had to be totally different.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quarterback I had at Salina, Hunter Watson. He won a national championship at Iowa Wesleyan, JUCO national championship, and then he signed with Sam Houston State. Kid's just a physical monster, 6'3", 213, probably closer to 217 now. Was squatting over 500 pounds. And where there were conversations where, because he was a real, not emotional guy, but just he was a big, his hurdle with his teammates was like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just do it. And so when they wouldn't, he would get really, really mad. And so some of the growth things that I would try and mix into practice were I would just walk up to him. I distinctly remember going into his senior year, we're in 2 days, and I walked up to him before, in the locker room before workouts, and I said, I'm going to yell at you at some point today. And it probably won't be your fault, but how you respond will impact the complete rest of practice.
Mm.
And he just looked at me and kind of laughed, and I was like, I'm not kidding. And it wasn't like it was created adversity, which we've kind of talked about before, but the whole purpose was like his teammates needed to see his mental, emotional growth and maturity,
Mm-hmm.
because if that had happened the year before and I jumped his butt because of something somebody else did, then he'd go jump their butt and freak out and yell, and that kid would fold and have a horrible rest of the practice. And when they could see him handle it the right way, just look forward, say yes, sir, and find a way to positively uplift his teammates to the expectation of the coaching staff, it was going to change the game. And what the biggest reason we did it is because we didn't know who our receivers were that year. We had a bunch of kids that were unproven, that had moved positions. We didn't know what they were capable of. And I'm a firm believer that the relationship between the receiver and the quarterback is so much more important for the receiver, because they need to know that they're trusted, that the quarterback believes in them, that the captain, the coach on the field is going to uplift them, because, as much as I love them, the vast majority of receivers are just sensitive.
Yeah, I'll prove it honest. It's one thing that Coach Lynch would always talk about at Vanderbilt was like, and I'll probably use it forever because it's so true at any level. It's like you can have a great team with an average quarterback and you have a really, really good chance to be average. And on the flip side, you could have an average team with a great quarterback. You have a great chance to be great.
100%.
And that's like, when he said that, I was like, man, that's so true. Because especially at the high school level, like it makes such a big difference.
And it's not like it's not because of anything other than the amount of responsibility and pressure that goes with that position. It's not so coaches can like put one kid on a pedestal above everybody else. It's not anything because of that. That kid, whatever led to the decision that he's going to be the guy, that kid has now donned more responsibility, more expectation than anybody else. Now, I don't want it to seem like, because I fear that a lot of parents could be like, oh, well, that's just how they protect the fact that they play favorites. And it's like, well, no. It's our way of acknowledging that whoever's in that role, your life is going to be a little bit harder than your peers. Your stress level is going to be a little bit higher. Your responsibility is going to be a little bit heavier. And everybody's watching you.
Yep.
Everybody. Your teammates, your coaches, the community members, schoolmates, everybody is watching you. How do you respond to the good? How do you respond to the bad? How do you respond when your teammates do good, when your teammates do bad? Can you handle that many eyes looking at you? And if you don't have those kind of conversations with the kid that's in that role, in my opinion, you're setting him up for failure, because he's got no chance of meeting expectations if he doesn't know that they're there and that they exist.
Correct. I totally agree. It's we were talking the other day, the quarterbacks, and we have a senior that's pretty good, and we have some young receivers, and we do one-on-ones, or we do 7-on-7, and there's some issues, whether it's like the route being cut short, or obviously sometimes he makes a bad throw, but I told him, I was like, dude, you have to apply we on everything. Like for the rest of your life, there is never a we. So like when that kid is supposed to be 9 steps and he cuts it to 7 steps, like on a hinge or something like that, you have to go to him and say, hey man, we can't cut that short. Like I was like, those little things of saying like you can't versus like we can't, the moment you start saying we and you include all of us together, like they probably don't realize it at the time, but they will be such less defensive when you can approach it that way, and they realize like you're actually in it with them. It's not just like you saying this, and that. And like applying that has made a big difference for us, because like you see the kids like actually come up to the quarterback now and like, hey, hey, what could we have done different there? Not like what could I have done different. And so like again, just like the vernacular you use, the standards at which you tell him, to expect and that we expect, and all that stuff. It's not applied really anywhere else as outside the quarterback room, just because it's so different.
And the psychology of that like approach and that statement, spoiler alert, apply it to the coaching world, apply it to the business world.
Yeah.
I think you can tell so much about great leaders by the verbiage in which they speak to their team.
Mhm.
I think that, you know, I think you and I share some personal, you may have had a multitude of these, but I think that you and I share some experiences of where that wasn't the case. And
Mhm.
the way that it impacted you when you approached your work, I know it impacted me, but it impacted me in a very immature way. But it definitely impacted me. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like if leadership's not speaking and approaching the issue, the topic, what the conversation, in an inclusive kind of servant leadership way, then
Mhm.
my subconscious response is going to immediately jump into defensive.
That's right.
And there's all different, like, you know, I think a lot of coaches get caught up in like the taglines and the like themes and things like that. But I think that if that's not a foundational piece of your program within your staff and your team, then it's so much easier to lose the locker room, to lose the coaching staff, because it's not,
Mhm.
you know, nothing bothers me more than like hearing or reading a head coaching interview. And it's like, well, you know, I don't call the defense, he does that. It's like, well, that's still a horrible reflection on you, because you're openly admitting that the guy that you handpicked to do the job can't get the job done.
Right.
So yeah, you may not be the one signaling in the defense, but you're still at the top of that ladder that's about to fall over. So
Correct.
if it's not, we've got to do a better job of putting the kids in a situation, and we've got to do a better job as a coaching staff of communicating, making sure we're on the same page. If you're not speaking that way, like you're going to struggle in a leadership role, and that it doesn't matter, coordinator role, whatever. If you're not speaking that way, you're going to struggle, because people are going to, when things are going good, hey, kumbaya, everybody, winning solves everything. But when you hit adversity and that communication style doesn't change, people will jump ship. They won't pick up they ain't gonna pick up a bucket and start throwing water overboard. They're just gonna go find a boat that doesn't have holes in it.
Right.
And I think that's the part that separates good leaders, good coaches from great coaches, great leaders, because the ones who can go through the valleys and not have to go through this drastic coaching style change or things of that nature, or where they can just, I think it was the Texas Tech basketball coach a few years ago. They lost like 4 or 5 games in a row. Somebody was like, "Coach, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "What do you mean what we're going to do? We're going to show up. We're going to practice the same. We're going to go to study hall the same. We're going to love our kids the same. We're going to study film the same. This isn't about the result. It's about the process."
Was that Coach Beard? That was.
I genuinely can't remember. The only thing I remember is the fact that he said it, and it was Texas Tech.
There you
So
go.
it may have
Correct 'em.
been.
Flip the switch a little bit. Yesterday, it's not finally approved yet, but the restrictions on analysts and QCs and GAs was lifted. So, like, I have a lot of buddies that are still in college, SEC, Big 12, and I guess I'm Big 12 anymore. Whatever. You get the point. Whatever you
Yeah,
want to
we
call
get
the
it.
conference.
We get it. You're big time. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. The Big 7.5. I don't know. But
Okay.
it's that's like a big deal. Now, I think a lot of them were anticipating that rule to be passed, in particular for unlimited coaching spots, which that did not happen. So, like, for example, you could have a pass rush specialist now. And so, like, a lot of the GAs and QCs were hoping, like, if he was a D-line GA, now he would get a new title. Now he's a full-time coach. I could totally be wrong here, but that part did not pass. The only thing that did pass as of now, and has to happen today, I think by the end of the day, Wednesday, is simply analysts and QCs can actually coach on the field. Because it's like the stupidest thing, like, compliance can listen to this podcast and they'll get pissed, but like, everywhere, like analysts and QCs are trying to coach. Like, like you got to a practice field, like by rule, they're not supposed to coach, but like you're not going to stop a coach from coaching, period. Like it is what it is. So like whether it is like inside or outside, like they're going to try to coach. And I think the NCAA has known that for a long time. I know there's a couple colleges that would, um, I'm not going to say who it was. They were blue. So, but anyways, they had a certain song that when compliance would walk out, they would play the song, and that would alert all the QCs and analysts to stop coaching, go grab their clipboard, and act like they were just being an analyst and not actually coaching. That way they wouldn't get in trouble from compliance.
That's genius. That's absolute. It's genius. That's that's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
That was our hooty hoo, like, oh, hey, compliance is here. And so I feel like everybody's kind of somewhere has done that. Not Vanderbilt. We played totally by the rules.
100%. Why would you
Yeah,
not?
that's exactly right. And so this is obviously, an alleviation for most of those guys now because it's like, now I can actually finally coach. I have to like be looking around my shoulder and I can feel comfortable coaching. And it also helps the position coach because like he can now feel free to actually say, hey, today when we go to our indie drill, you got it. And so like now as a position coach at the college level, you can feel more um, comfortable, I should say, of being able to actually help launch and grow your assistant, whoever that may be, whether it's an analyst or a QC. But again, it's still limited, I think, to 11 full-time coaches. Those analysts and QCs still can't go on the road recruiting, which that's a huge part of it that like they can't do. I think the only way that you can actually work around that is like if your position coach gets sick, that's the only time that like the assistant can actually go on the road. But
Which
regardless,
then
it's like if yeah,
then the NCAA is gonna be like, well, I need a doctor's note, and like I'm gonna need like I'm
yeah,
gonna need medical records. So then it's like
yep,
almost not even worth it.
yeah. But that's a big rule. So that's I think it's supposed to be approved like today finally. But that's I know there's a lot of guys that were calling other programs like, hey, if the rule passes for unlimited amount of spots, like you guys need like a you know non-hand in the dirt tight end coach. I got you,
I got
or
you.
whatever, whatever it
I'm
may
your
be.
man. Yeah. So you that's how I read the headline was that it was because that's been we've had that conversation. That's been what people were hoping for. I say
Yeah.
people. That's what college coaches were hoping for is the unlimited
Yep.
coaching staff. But that's not the version. You think it's just it's the number and the limitations. The number of limitations are still going to be there, but the responsibility restrictions is what's going to be lifted. Is that what you think?
And I could be completely wrong. I just read one article this morning, right before we jumped on, and that's what I read. It's also 5:30 in the morning, so I could be wrong. But that's what I had read, and so I don't know. I guess we'll see in the coming days. But that's what I thought. So regardless, that's a big deal.
What do you? Yeah.
I don't.
So that was going to be my next question. Is if on the off chance that it is restricting the number of staff members, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's stupid. If I'm being honest with you, I mean, I think it like what's for me everything is like what's the why? Like I tell my kids all the time, like ask me why, and I'm not gonna take it as you like questioning me. Like you should question me because if I can't tell you the why, then I suck as a coach. But um, like for me, it's like if you were to ask the why, like what's the why behind that? I would love to hear the answer for it. It just makes no sense because it's like okay, the more coaches you can hire, the better you're gonna make these players, and then that's what this sport's about. Um, and so, I mean, if you have the revenue and the money to do it and to hire 25 coaches and do it, like, is it an advantage over other programs? Yeah, sure. But like, I just don't understand why you would limit that. So, um, I think it's dumb. But um, I mean, I
I mean,
think I would think that you agree.
yeah, to me, I don't understand if that's the direction they go, then it falls in line with this pattern that the NCAA is on of like, it's feast or famine, it's all or nothing.
Yeah,
it's either you can't transfer without sitting out, or you can transfer wherever you want twice. right? Like it's, you can't pay players or you can pay them however much you want. Like, why does it have to be one extreme? Why is the pendulum swinging from one side of the earth to the other? Like, let's use logic. Let's do some like data analysis. Let's find out. It seems like a very lazy approach to be like, all right, fine, do whatever you want, because
Right.
then you're just one step closer to major college football being professional. Because who's going to hire the most coaches? The ones with the highest revenue. Who's going to be the schools that have the highest revenue? Well, the same 15 that have had it for the past 25 years, or longer. And that, does it help those kids develop? Sure. But you know what it doesn't do? It doesn't help us develop the game and develop it doesn't help you fight against the loss of amateurism that everybody accuses the NCAA of just throwing in the towel on in the past 5 years. Like, you guys went from trying to put amateur sports like in a stranglehold from like, we're never relinquishing our power to like, whatever, we're still getting paid. Y'all just do whatever you want. And it's just ignorant. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody's been hired by a school, let them coach. But that doesn't mean let the school hire whoever they want and however many they want. Pick a number, have some, like you said, have some reasons why you pick that number. Here's your staff size. Here's your support staff size. If they're on staff, they can do whatever they want. Because here's the only two approaches that's going to happen. If you've built a really good staff and support staff, that support staff, man, they're just going to jump through the hoops and they're going to be excited because they're going to do their support staff job and coach. And what some schools are going to do is they're going to be like, oh, well, we've got these support staff roles. We'll hire you as an analyst and you'll just be, like you said, our pass rush specialist. And that guy's going to come in and he's going to be, when he's at practice, man, he's going to get a pass rush individual and he's going to coach his tail off. But they're going to hire a guy because of the way that they approach the position that doesn't take the analyst job serious, and they lose that back end support, and it's going to hurt them. So give programs enough leash to fail or succeed. And the ones that are going to succeed it'll be proven through who they hire to fill those roles. Don't just throw in the towel and be like, we can't make y'all happy, so we're just going to stop trying to police anything. I think it's extremely lazy. I think that it's like you're going to potentially let a school have 45 coaches on staff, but you won't let a quarterback wear, technology in his helmet. We're still going to have 12 coaches on the sideline signaling and pictures of Scott Van Pelt's face and there's no consistency. There's no there just doesn't seem to be like consistent logic behind some of the decisions that are made. I said this 4 years ago. You want to have a transfer portal? You want to have NIL? Cool. I get it, but just don't tell a kid, hey, you can do whatever you want twice. Put restrictions on it.
Correct.
Make it contract based. Okay, you want to sign an NIL deal? Cool. Here's the money. But if you transfer, you owe us. You can go wherever you want, but if you sign a $300,000 NIL deal and you leave 8 months in, well, then you need to pay that money back.
Right.
And then you can go wherever you want. And watch what it does to because all, like you talked about last week, all the recruiting's, not all, a lot of what recruiting's come down to now is just who's writing the biggest check, who can get me on the field fastest. And
I agree.
So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think, and kind of going back to it, like what every coach should strive for, I've never been a head coach. Obviously you are, so I can't really speak to this, but I would think that you as a head coach would want a couple of characteristics from your staff, and one of them being growth, development. But hope is one key thing, especially for analysts and QCs. And what I mean by that's you want to have the ability to have hope that you might be able to grow within that program. And that's not just simply by knowledge, but it's also position wise. And so if you cap the number of positions you have, it kind of limits that ability because it's like, okay, if I've been a QC for 5 years and I've been a QC for a guy that's going to be here, or he's been here for 20 and he ain't leaving, like what more am I going to do here? Like I have to move on now where it's like if you know, break that cap and now it's like, you add a couple of positions because you can now I have hope as a young coach. It's like I can actually be a full-time coach here. And so like when you give a coach hope, like, dude, there's like he'll do so much more for you. Because he knows he's actually working towards something and he's not working towards like a top end ceiling where it's like, oh, once I get here it's my max. Like, and so like, one example, aside from hope is like experience. Like as a young QC or a GA or analyst, like the number one thing that restricted most of these guys from getting jobs at like another place is their lack of experience. Like our assistant head coach, the coolest thing he ever did was he's out at Penn State. Justin Lustig, he's awesome. What he did is he's like, all right, we're going to have every GA, QC, and analyst. You're going to do mock interviews with me, our middle performance coach, and then every support staff member. And you're going to go up there and talk about your recruiting style. I want you to talk about one position specific thing that you want to do, whether it's a scheme or whether it is a drill. Show the drill, and then show that same drill being applied in a game. Super cool. And so we all did that, and obviously the whole thing was like to prepare us for whenever we would launch into another program. We wanted to be a full-time coach. Well, the number one thing that most of us did not have was like position-specific drills with us coaching in it. Why? Because we can coach on the field. And it's like when you go to your next job to get like an interview and you're like, all right, show me some drills that you're doing, because like a college interview in football is completely different than high school. And I found that out really quickly. Like in high school, it is more of like, all right, what do you know? What can you do? What can you teach your kids? Why do you want to be a teacher? This and that. And at the college level, it's more of like, all right, like show me your teach shape, show me your scheme, show me your philosophy. And it's a 4.5 interview of nothing but like scheme, And so if you don't have that drill work, and they're like, okay, well, I'm sorry, you don't have any experience. Well, like how am I supposed to get experience? Like you're my first opportunity. Right. And it's like, that's where this thing has kind of helped a little bit, because now it's like these guys can actually have film of themselves coaching the kids and hopefully seeing it apply in the game. Now they actually have the experience they need to get a full-time job.
Yeah, and I think that's the situation where you find the positive in it. It's just I'll be curious to read the specifics of the decision, because if it just turns it into the coaching staff Wild West, we'll prepare to see, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame with, more coaches than players, and everybody's getting individual coaching because everybody wants to work at one of those programs, and hey, we can hire them. There's no, we're not breaking any rules. But that's what I hope doesn't happen. On the flip side, I think the coaches or the programs that take it too far, and they do crowd their sideline, I think that they'll see some negative impact. It'll just maybe take 8 months, because the too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. I think that's a very, very real and applicable metaphor that it works in so many different situations. You were talking about the growth aspect. That was one of the reasons that I loved my time at Salina, but I never thought that I would be there for 8 years, just because of the different things that I saw, and was told. People go to Salina, they love it, and they want to stay there forever. Like head coaches leave their head coaching position and they come to Salina to be an assistant coach, and they're just happy because it's fun to win. The kids are great, facilities are great, community's great, all that. But I'm looking at it, when my wife and I first met, one of our first conversations, I'm thinking I'm going to be there 18 months, and then after that second season, I'm going to be, either climbing the ladder or going back into the college ranks. And, fortunately it didn't happen that way, but I'm looking at the writing on the wall. I was the third offensive coordinator in the last 30 years at Salina. And so before I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm looking there going like, it ain't nothing ever going to happen here. We win too much. You can't justify change. And we win too much. These guys don't want to leave. Like I like winning. and now being in this role, one of the first conversations I have with somebody after they've been hired, I don't like having it in the interview because I think that the salesman comes out and people and they tell you what you want to hear. Oh, well, I want to be here forever and I just want to learn. And no, like, okay, you work here now. Tell me your plans. What's your 5-year plan? What are your ultimate goals, aspirations? What's the ladder look like to get there? And what I learned in this role is people aren't having those conversations with everybody. Had a coach on staff that that question had never been laid out to them. And so I just asked, where do you see yourself? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to be your ultimate goal within the profession? And they came back and said, I hadn't really thought about it. I guess I would like to be a head coach. I'd like to be a coordinator. I'd like to be like an admin coordinator, or director. And I said, okay, well, what does that look like? What can we do in the next 12 months to get one step closer to that being possible? And I didn't give her any answers. She had to kind of start to foster whatever that path looked like, but you could, at least now it's on your mind.
Right.
It's the Hyundai effect. Like, nobody ever sees a Hyundai until you think about it, and then all you see is Hyundais, right? Like,
Dude,
it's the Toyota
what
effect.
A true statement.
But if that seed's not planted, they can't water it. And so that was kind of how I viewed it when I did get into this role. Is I know that I'm going to mess up in my first year. I know that I'm going to make mistakes. But what I want my staff to know as a whole is that I have 2 big jobs, and I've heard a lot of the Joey Maguire tree say this. A lot of different guys that have become head coaches and preach the same thing, whether it's Coach Gates at North Crowley, Carlos Lynn, DJ Mann. I got 2 jobs. My job is to help my assistants get promotions and to help my kids that want to go play in college get there. Like, we develop them as humans. We teach them to be better people. And yes, that is 100% a big part of the role. But I have a responsibility to my coaching staff as well for them to confidently know that he's not trying to do anything and everything he can to keep me here. Well, you're a good coach and I don't want to lose you. Right. But you're also a good coach and a good person, and I want to help you be successful. And like I said, if you're not planting that seed, it's not getting watered. And they've got to explicitly know that exists, or they can't take advantage of it. I had no idea how to interview. I mean, and I learned this the extreme hard way. I'd been in Salina for 2 years before the head coach and the offense coordinator at the time finally told me, they're like, yeah, you came in for your interview and your suit collar, your blazer collar was like rolled on top of itself and like sticking out on one side. And I was like, guys, nobody at the moment was like, hey, let me fix. I said, I put it on in the parking lot because I drove an hour and a half to get here. Like, nobody at the time was like, hey, you look kind of stupid. Let's fix that. And they're like, wow, we didn't want you to like lose your confidence in the interview. I was like, lose my confidence? I got no confidence now. I've been working with y'all for 2 years. I feel like a clown. And, it was all in jest, but like, I never want to be the head coach, the athletic director that is reluctant to have those conversations. Hey, let's clean it up this way. Hey, let's, you look stupid. Your collar's jacked up.
Yeah.
But I think that it's like you have said, situations are situational, and you circle back to what we originally talked about. Like, you can't have that conversation the same with every coach on staff. Just like players are different, the coaches are different, and you've got to be able to approach the subject, but in the most beneficial way for that person.
I would think like retention obviously is a huge goal for head coaches. Again, no idea if I've ever been a head coach, but I would think like you want retention. And so like in my brain, like as long as the coach has awareness, like if you're a head coach and you're like truly trying to help these coaches launch and like better themselves and grow, and like, hey, like I'm okay with you coming here and like learning our learning our content, learning our scheme, whatever it may be, and then going off and bettering yourself. Like I think most coaches have enough awareness to be like, whether it's 5 years down the road and they're ready to be launched, and it's like, dude, this is like the best head coach ever. Like, not a lot of head coaches want to like help me like grow to then leave. Like, I don't think I want to leave. And so I think you kind of have the inverse effect where it's like if you're trying to like constantly keep people there and keep them in positions and like, obviously lower their ceiling, it's like that's the best way to not have retention and just, have everybody leave. And so, again, in this industry, it's so far in between as far as finding head coaches that are still trying to do it for transformation, not transaction. That if you can do that and you're actually like, no, I'm cool with you coming here and like learning and then leaving, obviously like through the right principles. I think most people when they get to that time, it's like, it's gonna have to be the exact perfect situation because I'm in such a great environment under a great head coach, like, which is so rare these days. Like I don't want to leave anymore.
Oh, 100%. And it's such a fine line to walk, especially right now in the job market in Texas. I like, yes, you want to support your staff. You want them to grow and have the opportunity to take that next step in their career. But the shortage is I mean, it's killing us right now.
Yeah.
So I have this undisclosed window in my head that like you can't apply to other people. You can't tell them when they are and aren't allowed to like take an opportunity and like try and grow. But in my world, it's like there's a 4-month window. You got January to April. Like seek growth opportunities there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get to May 1st, hey, you're back here. You're back to a solid commitment. And I say that in jest simply because otherwise you get into the last weeks of May, early June. Hey coach, I'm going to go take, okay, I get it. But now I've got 6 weeks to hire a head, fill in the job, right? Head softball, head baseball, head track, whatever. I've got 6 weeks to go find somebody. Oh, by the way, they've got to be certified to teach. And I've got to be able to lure them away from literally thousands of other jobs. I'm seeing 5A schools, 6A schools posting head coach positions, not football, but other sports, spring sport positions the first week of June. I'm seeing small schools that are still in need of like 4 or 5 coaches across the board. And so selfishly, I want to have those conversations as early as possible, as you could understand. And it's tough to not hold that resentment of like, well, this is a great opportunity for them, and I can understand why they would want to do it. And you kind of have to fight those inner dialogue battles of like, okay, just remember, this is what's best for them. It's not, you stop putting yourself first, and it's where you have to have that servant leadership mentality. You got everybody. Everybody can't be held to the high standard if the captain of the ship won't buck the stalls. Like everybody's got to be willing to do everything. That doesn't mean you'll always be asked to do it, but you got to be willing to.
Correct.
So last question I have. Last time we talked about, our first encounter, our first meeting. But I feel like the world needs to know the Trenton Kirkland recruitment story. I think that not the collegiate career, but dude, your high school recruitment story is probably one of the greatest like chain of events that I've ever heard in my entire life. And I want the world to know it.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, to say the least. So my best friend in high school, his name was Barry Brown. We grew up together, played together. He was a big D tackle. He's a big boy, and I was decently fast in high school, and so I had some PWO things going on with me. I'm running track my senior year. Long story short, I messed up my ankle pretty bad. It took him forever to diagnose what was actually going on. Ended up being a hole in my navicular bone. At that point, I had basically lost all contact with my any of the coaches that were recruiting me. And so I made the decision, like, I'm just going to follow my girlfriend at the time to West Texas A&M, and I'm just going to go to school and be super depressed. And so my best friend was getting recruited by Tarleton State, and he, we had to dream of playing our whole life together. And he was like, "Hey, like, I'm going to Tarleton. Um, let me like start passing around your highlight tape." I was like, "No, I'm good, bro. I'm just gonna go to WT, and I'm good." He ends up stealing my highlight tape, like stole it from my home. I wasn't aware, and I get a call like at 11 o'clock at night. It's like 10:45, 11 o'clock, um, from a random number, and it's the coach at Tarleton, and he's like, "Hey, just watch your tape. Barry showed it to me. Like blah blah blah. Like we want to offer you a scholarship." And I was just kind of like, one of those pull the phone back moments, like, what is going on? I was like, okay, where? And he's like, Tarleton State. I was like, where's Tarleton? He's like, about Fort Worth. I was like, all right, look, I'm gonna talk to my parents real quick. So like, woke up my parents and was like, hey, can I like take a scholarship to Tarleton State? And they're like, it's fine. And so like, literally like everything happened that night. I accepted a scholarship. Him and I go on our OV together. Um, Obviously, I ended up committing, and then, the story kind of goes on to where I ended up not playing because my ankle never healed up. I ended up coaching my last 2.5 years there. That's where I met Travis, and that's the story. But
Yeah, but he
yeah,
left
definitely.
out, just to clarify, he left out the best part. So the part that he left out that I know he doesn't want said is he goes first time on campus, first time in the facilities, walks in, and they're like, hey, who are you? Blah, 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 name tag, let's do all that. And he's like, oh, I'm Trenton Kirkland. And they're like, no, you're not. Trenton Kirkland's black. And he's like, no, I really am. And they're like, no, we've seen his tape. Trenton Kirkland's black. Like, you're not black, you're not that guy. So that's the part of the story that they had sight unseen. All they saw was his highlight tape, and Trenton wore long sleeves and tights. And so nobody, like, in his helmet covers. And the best part about it is the same thing happened, like, joking around with some high school coaches that I worked with. The same thing happened to Nathan Elliott. A bunch of coaches from Gilmer thought he was black because of the way he dressed and the way he played, yada, yada. But that's the best part of the story. They had no idea who this guy was. All they knew is that he played quarterback and he could run a little bit. And then it manifested into the year that I was there, the head coach being like, Trenton Kirkland, he's a world champion hurdler.
Dude, yeah.
State champion hurdler. Hey, Trenton Kirkland ran 12-second at 110. And
Yeah,
I'm
like
looking at Trenton like, I'm like, dang, bro, you're fast. He's like, oh, that's made up.
Yeah, I ran the 100. I was pretty fast. I ran the 200. I was pretty fast. And like, I know those times, obviously, because I ran them. And we're in a staff meeting, and the head coach is like, we were recruiting a kid who was from Kerrville, and he was really, really good at the hurdles. And mind you, like, what was I, 20 years old? Not even 20. No, I was probably 20, 19 or 20, in a staff meeting with a pretty intimidating head coach. And we're talking about hurdle times, and like, never paid attention to hurdle times. And so I'm sitting there in a staff meeting, obviously nervous because every young coach is in that meeting. And TK, hey, what did you run in the hurdles? I got it. TK ran this in the hurdles, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've never ran the hurdles in my entire life. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so like we break the meeting, and every coach is like, TK, you ran the hurdles? Like, hell no, I've never ran the hurdles in my whole life. Like, what is going on? And that like actually maintained for the next year and a half. Like anytime there was like a kid that ran the hurdles, I started like breathing heavily and like getting nervous. It's like, okay, hold on, what's a good time? Because he's about to ask me the staff meeting, and I don't know what a good time is. I was like Googling like best times for high school track kids. TK, what's a good time? Oh, you ran this. It's good. We should recruit him.
Because that happened well before I got there, and then they said it talking about a kid, and I looked at you and walked over. I was like, "Hey, bro, you ran the hurdle?" He's like, "No, didn't do that. Made up."
Nope,
Like,
made up.
okay, well, I'll make sure to bring it up as often as I can. I mean, it's
Oh
not like
my God.
it's not like you're Quincy Wilson out here.
Right.
Did you see?
Yeah.
Do you see him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, my buddy sent me a text. One of my buddies sent me a text and was like, "What's going on with high school track?" I was like, "I don't know, but I love it."
Different.
One of the somebody commented last week when we were talking about like things being hard, and they're like track and field, and 100%. Like if you're, and I say this from a place of, because I had one of my high school teammates call me out. If you're a football coach and you're not actively pushing, not forcing, but pushing high school track on your players, you're doing them a disservice. As someone who didn't take it serious in high school and saw how far behind I was when I got to the college level and where I could have been if I would have taken it serious, that is such a growth opportunity. Yes, you get faster. Yes, those things happen, but you also learn how to compete in the most isolated environment possible, because it's just you and the lines of your lane. Yes, there's other people out there, but you're running against the clock. You're not running against them. And there's nobody that you can, blame, complain, or deflect on and say, well, they didn't do that. No, it's you. It's the man in the mirror out there by themselves, learning to compete. And if you're not taking opportunities like that, then you're like, I don't know. Quincy Wilson's going to go to the Olympics this year at 16 years old. And if I ran against him in the state championship meet or even the Olympic trials and I got dusted by a 16-year-old and I was 18, 20, 22, like that would suck. But at the same time, Quincy Wilson is developing like the character skills from knowing what it takes to be good that will be unmatched the rest of his life. Usain Bolt said it best a few years ago. He was like, I trained 18 years to run less than 10 seconds. You guys complain about not seeing results in a month. And I do want to say, I want to take the opportunity, because whoever that commenter was right. Track is football off season. And if you don't treat it that way, you're doing your kids a huge disservice.
Totally agreed. And it's only going to make you better as a head coach, because it's going to make them faster and run better, and it ultimately helps you too.
It is really. I should have been like, yeah, Trenton's on his porch right now. This is the home they just bought outside of Nashville.
This is what OC pays Lipscomb Academy.